Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4. Today we're going to be starting a new campaign as the United Baltic Duchy, who recently got a update to their focus tree. So, you know, why not check them out? And we just did a an international campaign, so going for a Reichsback campaign. It just makes a little bit of sense for us. So, who is our main adversary for this campaign? I don't think it should surprise you that it's going to be the Russians, because that's who we border right now. Not the entire front, please. We don't need to be defending White Ruthenia right now. Just defend ourselves, but not like that. Just with you. We'll draw our front line like that. So we have 10 factories right now. 3, 2, and 5. Which actually is pretty decent for a country of our stature in the world at the moment. So we have a handful of civilian factories. Let's build at least one more military factory in Riga for now. Research slots, of course, we're going to go for our basic techs ASAP. Wonderful. National focus. So, right now, professional or manpower. Division training time goes down. Recruit population goes down. But we get more recruitable factor. Or people take longer to train up. I think just getting them to train up, like, better probably makes sense for us a little bit more. And you guys get party of socialism goes up, more stability and war support, and you give just 50 political power. Well, I think you unlock the most stuff for now, so let's go for the Constitutional Draft Committee. And we start off with basically no equipment, so we're not going to worry about you for now, but we can actually field 12 divisions, which is pretty good. The United Baltic Duchy. Standing on the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea, the United Baltic Duchy is the easternmost German state in Europe. Formed in 1918 with the initiative of the local Baltic German population, though initially imagined as a new member state of the German Empire, those hopes were eventually dashed at the geopolitical realities of the post-Weltkrieg Europe, and the overwhelming Latvian and Estonian majority populations made such a project impossible. Not that the Baltic Germans themselves hardly wanted to lose their identity to the Heimat, having successfully suppressed the Estonian War of Independence and prevented a similar uprising in Latvia thanks to the fractures in the Latvian nationalist movement, the Duchy established itself and now counts almost 20 years of history. The United Baltic Duchy is first and foremost rooted in tradition. It inherits a provincial asti law, a system of representation through landstags, and the institutional role of the Baltic kingdoms from the times of the Livonian Confederation, and those traditions make up a large part of the Baltic German identity. Even a porous Baltic noble is proud of living in a community which listens to the concerns of each and every landowner and holds the knightly traditions of the nobility in utmost respect. In practice, however, the means of the duchy is a barely functioning state of the Byzantine system of government, completely unprepared for the challenges that face ahead. So, interestingly enough about the United Baltic Duchy that I haven't actually seen with any other Kaiserreich country is that you can actually show more information than just, there. So we can do the Duchy will thrive, and that kind of just continues things on. But if we look at, let's say, who's currently in charge, Covenant of von Samson Himmelsturjurna. The current chairman of the land colleges and thus head of the Covenant of Land Administrators, the executive government of the duchy is Friedrich von Samson Himmelsturjurna, former member of the Ducal Regency Council and a member of the Baltic German Democratic Party. Following the selection of several conservative governments controlled by the Baltic kingdoms, the pressure for reform within the United Baltic Duchy eventually became too hard to bear. A strengthening Baltic German middle class, traditionally reluctantly allied with the conservative nobility, started to sway to the other side, joining forces with the reformists and the Baltic nationalists, if it meant that any reforms to the Byzantine antiquated system is introduced. Though by no means a liberal reformer, eventually Duke Adolf Friedrich himself had to intervene. Using the powers of royal prerogative, he dismissed the previous chairman of land colleges and cooperated with the liberal reformist Democratic Party to help forge an alliance of liberal and moderate parties. The true power behind the throne, however, is Paul Schiemann, a leader of the DBDP, a liberal reformist. He could not assume any position in the government because of his non-noble birth, but nevertheless serves as a guide of the current government from his lowly position. An idealistic visionary, Paul Schiemann envisioned a liberal pluralistic Baltic Federation with the established modern constitution, free, universal, and democratic elections, equality between the Baltic Germans and the native Balts, and a system of social welfare. Believing his vision to be superior to the reaction of the knighthoods, he is supported by the representatives of native Balts and German middle class in the Landstag and in the reluctant acquaintances of the moderate conservative DPRP. The Duke is also seeing his program as a step in the right direction, even if he disagrees with some of the tenets. What is our system of government? Government structure of the Duchy. United Baltic Duchy can best be described as a federal oligarchic semi-constitutional monarchy. It is evolved into 6 cantons, each one with its own land states and land colleges, and the autonomous city of Riga. This division of power is replicated in the federal government, which is composed of the land stake of the United Baltic Duchy and the Covenant of the Land Administrators. The Baltic Land Stake is a parliamentary body elected by the inhabitants of the duchy with a Prussian 3-house electoral system and headed by the Land Marshal. The land colleges and the Covenant are appointed by the 4 Baltic kingdoms, corporations of Baltic German nobility. Above both stands the Duke, who has the power of judicial and executive appointment, and other powers of royal prerogative. While it seems easy to assume the land stake is the legislator and the Covenant is the executive, the truth is far more complicated than that. The Covenant is not made up of ministries, but rather is a body of 18 land administrators who collectively manage the day-to-day affairs of a state of cooperation with knighthoods and the land stake. They have a feature of an upper house. They attend land stake sessions. They cannot propose laws, but review them. And their stated purpose is to diligent paternal care for the upholding of the rights, legality, institutions, and fixed customs of the nobility. The Covenant does not have permanent ministries, only temporary offices they can form to manage issues once they arise, and which fall under their purview. Meanwhile, the land stake can form its own executive offices and institutions with majority vote, something which Covenant is unable to prevent, nor can they propose laws. So their ability to rule the state is completely at the mercy of the land stake and whatever it wishes. The land stake is at the mercy of the Covenant too, however, as the role of the Baltic knighthoods to manage the state is an institutional and cannot simply be removed. This wasn't a problem in the 16th century when the knighthoods and land stakes were a large group of nobles, but things have changed. What are political concerns? Political concerns. The coalition orchestrated by the Baltic German Democratic Party may have been a noble goal to reform the duchy to the modern age, but their enemies are plentiful. The Baltic knighthoods, noble corporations which unite the Baltic German nobility, holds no goodwill towards the liberal constitutionalist project espoused by Paul Schliemann. Seeing it as a threat to the historical traditions of the lands they are supposed to protect, a major thorn to the side of the incumbent Covenant is the fact that the knighthoods have their own man in government, Baron Ron von Unger-Sternberg, Land Marshal of the Ducal Landstag. While by no means a reactionary, von Unger-Sternberg is a conservative landowner and definitely does not sympathize with the Liberal Democratic Party, and should the situation decay, his complacency may break at last. 2 decades of political decay and infighting have left quite a few Baltic nobles, especially younger ambitious ones, disappointed with the entire system. Both the liberal Baltic Federation project and the reactions to the Baltic knighthoods disappoint them, the former for surrendering to the inferior natives and the latter for failing to restore the greatness of the Baltic state. Their salvation is their Baltic Brotherhood, a clandestine religious and pan-German nationalist order operating in brotherly circles in cities and towns and exerting their power through influence within the Baltic German nobles. Its goal is to renew the Teutonic spirit of the Baltic Germans in a deep union with the German Empire. And their mission is to resurrect the medieval idea of Das nach Osten, a crusade to the east in the name of the Germanic superiority. Due to the Baltic Brotherhood's ambition to centralize the state, both the Duke and Landstake are adamantly incompatible and can never cooperate. The Latvians and Estonians have never fully accepted their subordination in the Baltic Duchy. Their nationalist movement lost strength after the failed uprising in 1918, but they rebuilt in the early 1930s. The government in exile of the Republic of Estonia in Stockholm and the Latvian National Council in Petrograd advocate for the independence of the respective nations, and the groups of partisans within the forests and hills are forming in preparation for the final struggle for liberation. The duchy will thrive. I don't know if I quite believe that, but, you know, you believe in what you want to believe in. So, of course, our first goal, when the war begins, we have, 3 years roughly to prepare, 3.5. Kerensky been shot, not a surprise. And Kornilov has stormed Moscow, so they have gone national populist. Well, they're going to go national populist. At some point, Sannikov will be taking over Russia, I assume. Because is there a way for just this guy to stay in charge? I don't think so. I think no matter what, Sannikov takes over in the future. So, of course, we hope Poland eventually joins with us. Don Union, if they want to join our faction as well, all those would be quite nice for us. So, Paul Schliemann's closing statements. Currently, Landstag of the United Baltic Duchy is gathered to the winter session in Riga. As the budget of fiscal year of 1936 has been approved and given the Covenant stamp of approval, the rest of the 2-week session has been largely passive and devoid of conflict. The closing statement of the Landstag session has been raised quite a bit of ruckus, however. While tradition requires the captains of the 4 Baltic knighthoods to make the closing statement and wish the gathered Baltic nobles a good year, Chairman of the land colleges, Friedman von Schiemann Himmelstjerna, instead invited Paul Schiemann, the head of the Democratic Party, to leave the departed Landstag members on a good note. Albeit sickly and elderly, Schliemann has managed to fulfill the duties requested and spoke for half an hour about the envisioned reforms that him and his party and the government of the duchy. On the other hand, however, he avoided getting into a verbal conflict with the knighthoods, mentioning them and affirming them good men such as these are necessary in times of change, and I sincerely hope they will lend their support to the cause of reforms. While there's not going to mend the rift between him and Adolf Constantine, Pilar von Pichu, the knight captain of Livonian knighthood, and by extension the most powerful of the four knight leaders, the inclusive nature of the speech has assuaded the fears of many conservatives. So, why do some German people just have names? Like, he has 4 names. Okay, so we're getting some political power, some stability, but who is Paul Schliemann? I know there's no L in there, but I'm going to pronounce it Schliemann no matter what. Schiemann? Carl Christian Theodor Paul. He's got 5 names, and like 3 of them are first names. Carl Christian Theodor Paul Schiemann was born in 1878 in Mittau in Courland, then part of the Russian Empire. While not noble himself, he came from the wealthy middle-class Baltic German family and was thus able to obtain a fulfilling education in Germany, as well as an officer of military service in the Imperial Russian Army. Even before the Weltkrieg, he gained notoriety as a bleeding-heart liberal, engaged in constant polemics with conservative Baltic German society, even ending being briefly expelled from Riga by the Livonian knighthood in 1917. Upon returning to his homeland a year later, he founded the DBDP alongside Friedrich von Schiemann Himmelsterne to push for his vision of a liberal Baltic Federation. Schiemann is a committed liberal Democrat opposed to conservative nationalism and syndicalism, the former for standing against everything liberals fight for, and the latter for being an abnormal deformity of liberty which denies the individual personality in favor of uncultured mediocrity of the masses. His definition of liberalism is different from the West, however. Schiemann believes in the abolition of privileges and the strength for individual merit, but not in universal political equality. To him, it is ridiculous to imagine a cleaning maid with the same political rights as a university professor. His political vision is corporatist and much more akin to meritocracy than democracy. Though, as he concludes, liberal democracy is a good method for finding the best man, to him, it is a cultural mission of the Baltic Germans to teach the liberal ideas to the Latvian and Estonian masses. Schiemann's other major contribution in the concept of the Anatolian state, borrowing heavily from Austro-Marxism, Schiemann interprets ethnicity as a spiritual community, much like religion, and posits that nationalism must be separated from the state in the same way religion is. Instead, all ethnic groups within the country must exist as voluntary communities, defending the interests of their members. This Anatolian statehood forms the basis of the Baltic Federation project. So there's definitely more dialogue, more lore, I guess you would say. Definitely in this match. Even and South Africa, which also just got a folk history update, did not actually kind of have these more in-depth, I guess, explorations, I guess you could call them. Otto von Kursel consolidates the Brotherhood. The Baltic Brotherhood has been shaken by inter-brother identical struggles in the longest part of 1935, but on the onset of the new year, this conflict has seemingly come to an end. Information about the true inner workings of the secretive Christian fundamentalist and pan-German nationalist order are few and far between, but throughout the year, the so-called outer ring of the Brotherhood, which maintains some contact with the outer world, has seen many members relieved for having violated the principles of the Brotherhood. Similar layouts have taken place in even more secretive inner ring. Brothers previously believed to be calling the shots in the direction of the Brotherhood, such as Harald von Rochenfeld and Edward von Dillenhausen, have completely lost their influence in its ideological and actions. In their expense, Otto von Kursel has consolidated his absolute rule over the Brotherhood, having held the position of leading brother since 1928. Von Kursel was initially seen as a compromised figurehead and competent administrator who drafted a statute of the Brotherhood and was shown to be increasingly controlling and ideological over the years. Within the Brotherhood, he stands for the leading advocate for the Austrian faction, a faction of pan-German and Christian fundamentalist bent. It sees itself and all Baltic Germans as a messianic spiritual guide to Germanic people who will lead the militant missionary mission to the Orient as loyal subservients of a new Germany. What is the Baltic Brotherhood? We're going to get more popularity for national populism and a little bit less stability. The Baltic Brotherhood. The harsh years of the post-Weltkrieg period left many youthful Baltic German nobles disillusioned. The United Baltic Duchy turned out to be a smoldering dumpster fire, the antiquated traditions completely unfit for the modern day, and particularism, the leaders turning pan-German unity into a distant dream. The world itself began to turn upside down. Bolshevism, syndicalism, the Latvian Estonian nationalism, all rose to shake their old way of life. Faced with all this, many of them turned towards the Lutheran faith, their religious beliefs joined by an unyielding anti-syndicalism and pan-German nationalism. Developed towards extremism, the Baltic Brotherhood was founded in 1928 by some of the most prominent members of the younger Baltic German generation, including Harald von Rechtig, Sylvester von Rupp, Georg and Hans von Mentelschnauzkis, and Otto von Kursel. The Baltic Brotherhood was founded as a secret Christian fundamentalist and panegyric order and remains such to this day. It is organized in brotherly rings, which operate in every major town in the duchy and exists as a place for religious worship, common labor, and philosophical thought. The Brotherhood operates with the defined statute and set of mandatory principles, including flawless trustworthiness, obedience to one elder brother, and chastity, among others. All members of the Brotherhood are divine in the outer ring, or the ring of preparation, and the inner ring. Advancing from the former to the latter is a considerable feat. The Baltic Brotherhood absolutely is not a mass movement, but it maintains a great amount of influence within the government. Many of its members are high-ranking members of the knighthoods and representatives in the Landstag. Of course, keeping their allegiance is a secret. Among the Baltic Landwehr, the Brotherhood's most ardent supporter is Hans von Muttenzogen, a member of the Inner Ring. Okay, all of that. And we're still in January, and we're 16 minutes into the video, so we'll kind of see how far we can really get. And I'm not too sure exactly what path we're going to take. Do you guys have an election as the Baltic Duchy? We have absolutely no election, so the answer to the question is no. And I don't think there's really any... I mean, maybe you do. Constitution of the Baltic Federation. You might actually maybe change how things are kind of going for us, is my best guess. So Black Monday has now fired. So we'll see what kind of horrible debuffs we're going to get in just a mere moment. We are missing a lot of steel, though, so I'll trade one steel with... Can I get from Germany? We'll trade with Germany for now. I think it makes sense if we want to maybe help out our overlord a little bit here. Because right now we have 4 divisions. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 7 minimum to cover the entirety of the front line. Political power plus 100. I think we probably just want the stability as much as we possibly can get. Because right now we're at 26, which is really harming our factory output, which is really not what we're wanting right now. We want as many guns as we can possibly get our hands on. Black Monday reaches the duchy. The economic boom in the late 1920s and early 1930s has come to an end. The United Baltic Duchy's deep economic ties with the German Empire have dragged it and the rest of the Reichspakt to deep economic disarray. Exports have frozen, factories are relieving workers en masse, and all financial activity has come to a screeching halt. This crisis caught the Ducal Landstag dissolved and the Covenant of Land Ministers paralyzed. Unsure of how to act in response, there's only one thing left to do to counter the developing economic crisis. So we're going to be taking negative 10% stability, 25% consumer goods, negative 30% construction speed. Everything is bad. Just really, really, really not what we want. And now I don't have any steel because I have no factories. We're not even building anything. So that is not really what we want at all. And unsurprisingly, people in China, they're going to war with each other. That's kind of what China does in the early game. So we really shouldn't be too surprised. What actually do we have here? Training time, very expensive. We have we have really high recruit population. Organization's pretty good. But our factor is garbage. Just absolutely horrible. You're not great. You're not great. Mass immigration. 40% monthly population. That's not really what we want at all. All these things are bad. These are all not good things. So maybe we can try to make things a little bit better. Maybe. The 400 rifles. How many guns do each one of you guys take? 600? You're actually a really small brigade. But I'll at least get 3 of you guys training up for now. So we can at least cover our entire front line when the time comes. February 24th. Today on February 24th, 1918, the Masvez, the Legislative Assembly of the Autonomous Government of Estonia, declared the independence of the Republic of Estonia. This declaration was made in the heat of the moment during Operation Volkschlag, and thus made null by the advancing German armies. The Estonian provisional government chose resist instead of surrender. However, during the German occupation, they assembled paramilitary forces in secret and staged a rebellion not long after November 5th. The Declaration of Independence of the United Baltic Duchy... not long after November 5th, the Declaration of the United Baltic Duchy. This marks the beginning of the Estonian War of Independence. It was a failed uprising suppressed by the Baltic Landwehr with the help of German arms, but allowed the Estonian provisional government to escape to Sweden and continue their fight in exile. To this day, they claim to be a legitimate government of Estland and Northern Livland, and have and many Estonians see their claims as just. Every year, we seek to stomp out the celebrations of the Estonian Day of Independence to little avail. Are we losing? You know, 5 political power actually not that bad. And ringing alarm bells. An extraordinary session of the Baltic Landstag has been called, but only the exorbitant tensions within the upper echelons of government. In the first weeks of debate, no solution has been found, and even the Liberal coalition itself disagrees on what response should be taken. The representatives of the mercantile classes and the moderate conservatives under the Reform Party and Progressive Party align with the Democratic Party out of circumstances. Vehemently disagree with Paul Schliemann's proposal of a social market economy. He and Chairman von Simson Himmeljourna believe that the duchy's economic downturn was caused by unbridled free market activity, and a compassionate social service system must arise in its place. Moderates such as Edvig Möngeres and Werner Hasselblatt have delivered scathing criticism of the proposal in Landstag, however, despite being ultimately in the same coalition. On the other hand, the Democratic Bloc, a social democratic alliance of Latvian and Estonian representatives in Landstag, declared the proposal does not go far enough. Paulus Kalnins? Probably not even say that at all. The leader of the Democratic Bloc faction in the legislature has delivered a report on the exploitation of native Baltic workers in German business firms in Revel and Riga. Description of sharp poverty among the peasant population and the demand for the government to act. All plans of constitutional reforms are put to rest when the coalition is struggling to survive. More stability lost, more political power lost. Both of those, not really what we're wanting. But I do think that for right now, it's going to be a good time for us to end this episode. So thanks everybody for watching. My name is Ansem. If you've enjoyed, give me a thumbs up. Not doing, throw some down. Watch more, subscribe, and goodbye.